The moment Zachary James walked into the emergency room with blood dripping from his hand, he never expected to lock eyes with the one woman who could completely unravel the carefully controlled life he had built. Natalie Ross stood behind the nurse's station, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her green eyes widening as she recognized him immediately. Not because he was the CEO of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country, but because she had seen him countless times in the background of her brother's life, always just out of reach, always untouchable. Zachary. Her voice carried across the bustling emergency department, and he felt something shift in his chest. He raised his injured hand slightly, offering a pained smile. "Hey, Natalie. Long time no see." She grabbed a clipboard and hurried around the desk, her scrubs swishing as she moved. "What happened to you?" Glass door at the office. "I was working late and walked right into it like an idiot." He tried to sound casual, but the throbbing in his hand was making him nauseous. Natalie gestured for him to follow her to an empty examination room. As she prepared supplies to clean and assess his wound, Zachary studied her. She had changed since he last saw her at Marcus's birthday party 3 years ago. She seemed more confident, more settled into herself. She must be around 26 now, he calculated, which made him feel ancient at 32. "Does Marcus know you're here?" she asked, carefully unwrapping the makeshift bandage he had created from his shirt. "No, I didn't want to bother him this late." Natalie glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. "You two have been best friends since college. I think he'd want to know if you needed stitches." "You think I need stitches?" "I think you definitely need stitches." She began cleaning the wound with practiced efficiency. "This is pretty deep, Zachary. You're lucky you didn't hit a major blood vessel." He watched her work, noting the gentle way she handled his hand despite the urgency of the situation. "I didn't know you were working at Memorial Hospital now." "Marcus mentioned you were finishing up your nursing degree." "I graduated 8 months ago. This is my first job as an RN." Pride colored her voice, and Zachary found himself smiling. "Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment." "Thanks." She met his eyes briefly before focusing back on his hand. "The doctor will be in soon to do the stitches. I'm going to set up the suture kit." As she moved around the room gathering supplies, Zachary felt an unfamiliar flutter of nerves. He had known Natalie for years, had seen her grow from an awkward teenager into a beautiful woman, but he had always kept his distance. She was Marcus's little sister, completely off limits. Marcus had made that clear without ever saying the words directly. The unspoken rule among their friend group was that Natalie was protected territory. But sitting here now, watching her competent hands prepare medical equipment, Zachary found himself questioning why he had never really talked to her before. Every interaction had been brief, superficial, carefully maintained at a safe distance. "So how's the pharmaceutical empire?" Natalie asked, breaking the silence, demanding. "We just got FDA approval for a new cardiac medication, so things have been intense." "I read about that." "It's supposed to significantly reduce heart attack risk in high-risk patients, right?" Zachary raised his eyebrows. "You've been following our research," she shrugged, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "I work in healthcare. I try to stay informed about new medications." Before he could respond, the door opened, and Dr. Chen walked in, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who greeted them both with professional warmth. Natalie assisted as the doctor numbed Zachary's hand and began the meticulous work of stitching the wound closed. Throughout the procedure, Zachary found his gaze drifting to Natalie, noting the concentration on her face, the careful way she anticipated what the doctor needed before being asked. When it was finished, Dr. Chen gave him instructions for wound care and a prescription for antibiotics. Keep it dry, change the dressing daily, and come back in 10 days to have the stitches removed. Natalie will wrap it up for you." After the doctor left, Natalie carefully bandaged his hand. "You need someone to drive you home. The local anesthetic is going to wear off soon and you might feel pretty rough. I can manage, Zachary." She fixed him with a stern look that reminded him startlingly of Marcus. "Don't be stubborn. When does your shift end?" 20 minutes ago, actually. I was just finishing up paperwork." "Then drive me home." "My car is in the shop anyway." Natalie hesitated, clearly torn between professional concern and something else. Finally, she nodded. "Fine, but I'm driving your car, whatever fancy thing you drove here in. It's just a BMW. "Of course it is." She rolled her eyes, but there was amusement in her expression. 20 minutes later, they were in his car, Natalie behind the wheel looking slightly overwhelmed by the luxury interior. "This is not just a BMW, this is like a spaceship." Zachary laughed, the sound surprising even himself. "It has heated seats and a good sound system. Not exactly rocket science." As Natalie navigated through the late-night city streets, they fell into easy conversation. She told him about nursing school, the challenges of working overnight shifts, her small apartment in a neighborhood Zachary didn't know well. He found himself sharing more than he usually did, talking about the pressure of running a company his father had built, the loneliness that came with the position. "You know what Marcus told me once," Natalie said, glancing at him as they stopped at a red light. "He said you were the smartest person he ever met, but also the loneliest." The observation hit closer to home than Zachary wanted to admit. "Marcus talks too much. He worries about you. He says you work too hard, that you never take time for yourself." Marcus is one to talk. He is practically married to his architecture firm. "True." Natalie smiled. "The Ross siblings aren't great at work-life balance, apparently." When they pulled up to his building, a sleek high-rise in the financial district, Natalie looked up at it with wide eyes. "You live here, penthouse." He felt oddly embarrassed by the admission. "Of course you do." But there was no judgment in her tone, just curiosity. Zachary hesitated, not wanting the evening to end. "Do you want to come up? I can call you a car service to get home." Natalie checked her phone, considering. "It's almost 2 in the morning. I make excellent coffee, and I promise I'm not being weird. It was nice talking to you tonight." She studied him for a long moment, and Zachary held his breath. Finally, she nodded. "Okay. But only because you need someone to make sure you take your antibiotic, and I don't trust that you'll remember." His apartment was exactly what Natalie expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Yes, it was enormous and beautifully decorated with modern furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But it also felt lived in. Books were stacked on the coffee table, a throw blanket was draped over the couch, and there were framed photos scattered around that showed a life beyond work. While Zachary fumbled one-handed with the coffee maker, Natalie examined the photos. Many featured Marcus and Zachary in various stages of their friendship. College graduation, a hiking trip, what looked like a fishing expedition gone wrong based on their muddy appearances. "That was in Montana," Zachary said, coming up behind her with 2 mugs. "Marcus insisted we could catch salmon. We caught nothing but hypothermia." Natalie laughed, accepting the coffee. "He never told me about that trip. He made me promise never to speak of it. I believe his exact words were that his reputation as an outdoorsman could not survive the truth." They settled on the couch, the city lights twinkling below them. Natalie curled her legs under her, cradling the warm mug. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why have you always avoided me?" The directness of the question caught Zachary off guard. He set his own mug down carefully, buying time. "What do you mean? Come on, Zachary." Every time I showed up at an event where you and Marcus were, you'd barely say 2 words to me before finding an excuse to leave. At first, I thought you just didn't like me, but tonight, you're different." He rubbed the back of his neck with his good hand. "It wasn't that I didn't like you. It was the opposite, actually." Natalie's eyes widened slightly. "What? Marcus is my best friend. You're his little sister. There's a code, you know, and I always thought you were too young, off limits. It seemed easier to just keep my distance." "I'm 26, Zachary. I haven't been a little kid in a long time." "I know that." His voice came out rougher than intended. "Believe me, I know that." The air between them shifted, charged with an awareness that neither had acknowledged until this moment. Natalie set down her coffee mug slowly. "So what changed tonight? I saw you as Natalie, not as Marcus's sister. Does that make sense?" "Yeah." She moved slightly closer. "It makes sense." Zachary knew he should pull back, should maintain the boundary that had always existed between them. But when Natalie reached out and gently touched his bandaged hand, concern evident in her expression, something in him cracked open. "Does it hurt?" "Not as much as it probably should." She looked up at him, and Zachary found himself leaning forward, drawn by something he couldn't name. But at the last second he stopped himself. "This is a bad idea." "Why? Marcus would kill me. Marcus doesn't get to decide who I spend time with." There was steel in her voice. "I'm an adult, Zachary. I make my own choices." He wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons why this was complicated and potentially disastrous. But Natalie was looking at him with those green eyes, and all his carefully constructed defenses were crumbling. "One coffee," he said finally. "Let's have one coffee together in the daylight when we're both thinking clearly. If you still think this is a good idea, then we'll figure it out." Natalie smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Okay, one coffee." She stayed another hour, and they talked about everything and nothing. When Zachary finally called her a car service, he walked her down to the lobby, hyper-aware of every point where their hands almost touched. "Thank you," he said as the car pulled up, "for patching me up and for the conversation. Thank you for the coffee." She paused at the door, then turned back and kissed his cheek quickly. "Text me about that coffee date." As the car pulled away, Zachary stood in the lobby, touching his cheek where her lips had been, and wondered what the hell he had just set in motion. The next morning, despite functioning on minimal sleep, Zachary found himself staring at his phone like a teenager. He had Natalie's number from the hospital paperwork, but using it felt like crossing a significant line. Yet he had promised coffee, and he wasn't the type to go back on his word. He finally sent a text just after noon. "This is Zachary. How does coffee sound tomorrow afternoon? There is a place near the hospital if that works for your schedule." Her response came 15 minutes later. "That works. I have a shift tomorrow night, so afternoon is perfect. Send me the address." It was simple, straightforward, and yet Zachary found himself grinning at his phone like an idiot. His assistant, Jennifer, noticed immediately when she came in for their afternoon meeting. "You look happy. Did the Barton merger finally go through?" "What? No, that's still pending." Zachary set his phone down, trying to compose himself. "What's on the agenda?" Jennifer, a sharp woman in her 50s who had worked with Zachary's father before transitioning to assist him, gave him a knowing look but mercifully didn't comment further. They spent the next 2 hours reviewing quarterly projections, discussing personnel issues, and planning for an upcoming board meeting. As Jennifer was gathering her materials to leave, she paused. "You should take some time off. When was the last time you took a vacation?" "I don't know." 2 years ago, maybe 3, Zachary. She shook her head. "Your father didn't work himself to death so you could do the same thing." The mention of his father brought the familiar ache. David James had died of a sudden heart attack 5 years ago, leaving Zachary to take over the company at 27. It had been overwhelming, terrifying, and Zachary had responded by throwing himself into work completely. "I'll think about it," he said, which they both knew meant he wouldn't. That evening Marcus called. "Hey man, wanna grab drinks tomorrow?" Zachary's stomach dropped. "I can't tomorrow, I have plans." "Plans? You never have plans, what's going on?" "Just coffee with someone." There was a pause. "A woman, maybe." Marcus whooped loudly enough that Zachary had to pull the phone away from his ear. "Finally, who is she? How did you meet? Wait, is this about that charity gala last month? I saw you talking to Elizabeth Werner." "It's not Elizabeth." Zachary felt sweat forming on his forehead. He hated lying to Marcus, but he wasn't ready to explain the situation yet. "It's someone I recently reconnected with." "Well, whoever she is, I'm glad. You need someone in your life besides spreadsheets and medical research." After they hung up, Zachary sat with the weight of his omission. He told himself it was just coffee, nothing serious enough to mention to Marcus yet. But he knew he was rationalizing, and the guilt sat heavy in his chest. The next afternoon, Zachary arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, a nervous habit he thought he had outgrown in college. He chose a table by the window and tried to look casual, despite checking his watch every 30 seconds. Natalie walked in exactly on time, wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes look even greener. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders, and Zachary stood up so quickly he almost knocked over his chair. "Hey," she said, smiling as she approached. "Hey, you look great." "Thanks. You look less bloody than the last time I saw you." They both laughed, and the tension eased slightly. After ordering their drinks, they settled into the conversation more naturally than Zachary expected. Natalie talked about a difficult patient she had helped the night before, a young mother who had been terrified about her child's condition. Zachary found himself admiring not just her compassion but the way she had navigated a complex medical situation. "You're really good at this," he said. "Nursing. You can tell you care." "It's what I always wanted to do. Even when I was a kid, I would patch up Marcus after his stupid stunts." "Remember when he tried to jump his bike over that creek?" Zachary groaned. "Broken collarbone. We told his parents we were just riding normally when he hit a rock." "I knew you guys were lying. I was 12, not stupid." Natalie grinned. "But I never told. Sibling loyalty." As they talked, Zachary felt himself relaxing in a way he rarely did around anyone. Natalie was easy to talk to, quick-witted, and she called him out when he got too serious or started talking about work in that detached, corporate way he had developed over the years. "You do that a lot," she observed after he had spent 5 minutes discussing market trends without taking a breath. "Do what?" "Hide behind business speak. It's like you put on a CEO mask and forget to be just Zachary." He sat back, slightly stung but recognizing the truth in her words. "It's habit, I guess. Easier to be the CEO than to be myself sometimes." "Why?" "Because the CEO has answers. The CEO knows what he is doing. Zachary, just a guy who lost his dad too soon and is terrified of screwing up everything his father built, is a lot messier." Natalie reached across the table and took his hand, careful to avoid his bandaged palm. "I like the messy version better." They stayed at the coffee shop for 3 hours, long past when they had finished their drinks. The conversation flowed from childhood stories to dreams for the future, from favorite books to terrible movies they loved anyway. By the time they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I should get to the hospital," Natalie said reluctantly. "My shift starts in an hour. Can I drive you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I'd like that." In the car, the comfortable silence they had developed stretched between them. As they pulled up to the hospital, Natalie turned to him. I had a really good time today. Me too. Can I see you again? Yes. But Zachary, we need to talk about Marcus eventually. His stomach clenched. I know, just not yet. Let me figure out how to approach this. Natalie bit her lip, clearly conflicted. I don't like hiding things from my brother. We're not hiding anything. We're just getting to know each other. There is nothing to tell yet. It was a thin rationalization and they both knew it, but Natalie finally nodded. Okay, but soon we tell him. Over the next 3 weeks, Zachary and Natalie fell into a pattern. They would meet for coffee between her shifts, take walks in the park near her apartment, have long phone conversations late at night when they both couldn't sleep. With each interaction, Zachary found himself falling deeper, feeling things he had never experienced before. It wasn't just attraction, though he definitely felt that. It was the way Natalie challenged him, made him laugh, listened to his fears about the company without judgment. She treated him like a person, not a position, and it was intoxicating. But the secret was wearing on him. Marcus had invited him to dinner twice, and Zachary had made excuses both times, afraid that his best friend would somehow see the truth written all over his face. The guilt was compounded by the fact that Natalie was clearly struggling with the deception too. Marcus asked me if I was seeing someone, she told Zachary one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the river. I didn't know what to say, so I changed the subject. What do you want to tell him? She turned to look at him, her expression serious. The truth. That I'm falling for his best friend and I don't care if he approves or not. Zachary's heart stuttered. You're falling for me. Are you really surprised? Natalie laughed softly. I thought it was pretty obvious. He cupped her face with his good hand, his stitches having been removed the week before. I'm falling for you too. Have been since that night in the emergency room, if I'm being honest. Then why are we still sneaking around? Because I'm terrified of losing Marcus. He's the only real family I have left. Natalie's expression softened. You won't lose him. He loves you, Zachary. Yeah, he is protective of me, but he is not unreasonable, and he wants you to be happy. What if he makes you choose? Then I choose you. The certainty in her voice stunned him. I know we have not been doing this long, but what I feel for you is real. I'm not giving that up. Zachary kissed her then properly for the first time. It was soft and sweet and felt like coming home. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Okay, we tell him. Together. They planned to tell Marcus the following Saturday. He had invited them both to a barbecue at his house, unaware that they had been seeing each other. The coincidental double invitation had seemed like fate or possibly a nightmare. The night before the barbecue, Zachary couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, running through every possible scenario. Marcus punching him seemed likely. Marcus never speaking to him again seemed probable. Marcus being happy for them seemed impossible. His phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Are you awake? Yeah, can't sleep. Me neither, want company. 20 minutes later, she was at his door, wearing sweatpants and an oversized college sweatshirt that he recognized as one of Marcus's old ones. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They lay on his couch, Natalie tucked against his side, and watched the city lights in silence for a while. What if this ruins everything? Zachary finally voiced his deepest fear. What if it doesn't? Natalie countered. What if Marcus sees how happy we make each other and realizes that's what matters? You're more optimistic than I am. One of us has to be. She tilted her head up to look at him. Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. Okay. Okay. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and when Zachary woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. The barbecue was at Marcus's house in the suburbs, a beautiful craftsman-style home that he had designed himself. When Zachary arrived, deliberately coming separately from Natalie to avoid suspicion, The backyard was already full of people. Marcus's colleagues from the architecture firm, some mutual friends from college, neighbors with their kids running around. Marcus greeted him with a beer and a backslap. "About time you showed up. I was starting to think you'd bail again." "I wouldn't miss it." The lie tasted bitter. "Natalie is here somewhere. She was asking about you earlier, actually." Zachary's pulse jumped. "Oh, yeah, something about making sure your hand healed properly. I didn't know she treated you at the hospital." Marcus gave him a curious look. "When did that happen?" "Few weeks ago." "Minor accident. Nothing serious." Before Marcus could ask more questions, someone called him away to deal with the grill. Zachary found Natalie in the kitchen, arranging fruit on a platter. She looked up when he entered, and the warmth in her smile made his chest tight. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." He wanted to touch her, to kiss her, but they were in Marcus's house, surrounded by people. "You okay?" "Nervous, but ready." They had agreed to wait until after lunch, when things were more relaxed and they could talk to Marcus privately. But as the afternoon wore on, Zachary felt his anxiety building. Every time Marcus laughed at a joke or clapped him on the shoulder, the guilt intensified. Finally, as the sun started to dip lower and guests began trickling out, Natalie caught Zachary's eye and nodded toward the house. They found Marcus in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. "Hey, can we talk to you about something?" Natalie asked, her voice steadier than Zachary felt. Marcus looked up, immediately picking up on the serious tone. "Sure, what's going on? You both look like someone died." They sat at the kitchen table, and Zachary felt like he was about to face a firing squad. Natalie reached under the table and squeezed his hand, giving him courage. "There is something we need to tell you," Zachary started. "And you're probably going to be angry, and you have every right to be." Marcus's expression shifted to concern. "You are freaking me out, just tell me." Natalie jumped in. "Zachary and I have been seeing each other for about a month now." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus looked between them, his face going through a rapid series of expressions: confusion, realization, shock, and something that might have been anger. "You are dating," he said flatly. "You two are dating." "Yes," Zachary confirmed. "And I know this is complicated, and I know I should have told you sooner. But Marcus, I'm falling in love with your sister, and I needed you to hear it from me." Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He paced to the window, his back to them, and Zachary prepared for the worst. "How long have you had feelings for her?" Marcus's voice was tight. "Honestly, longer than I want to admit, but I never acted on it until recently. I never would have if it had not been something real. And you?" Marcus turned to Natalie. "You're sure about this? He is my best friend, Nat. If this goes south, it affects everyone." "I'm sure." Natalie stood up, facing her brother with the same steel Zachary had seen that first night. "I love him, Marcus. I know it's fast, and I know it's complicated, but it's real. And I need you to understand that I'm not asking for permission. I'm asking for your support." Marcus looked at his sister for a long moment, then back at Zachary. "You hurt her, and I will end you, best friend or not." Zachary stood as well. "I would never hurt her intentionally. You have my word, your word." Marcus laughed, but it wasn't entirely bitter. "The same word you gave me that you would never date my sister because it would be too weird. That was 8 years ago, and we were drunk. Still counts." The tension held for another beat, then Marcus sighed deeply, rubbing his face with both hands. "This is insane. You two are insane." "Does that mean you're okay with it?" Natalie asked hopefully. "I don't know if okay is the right word, but I can see it now that you have said it. The way you have both been acting weird lately makes sense now." He looked at Zachary. "You really love her." "I really do. And she makes you happy. Like genuinely happy, not just distracted from work. She makes everything better." Marcus turned to his sister. "And he treats you right." Better than anyone ever has. Another long silence, then Marcus grabbed 2 more beers from the fridge and handed one to Zachary. Then I guess we are doing this, but I have rules. Rules? Natalie raised an eyebrow. No talking about your relationship when we are having guys' night. I don't want to hear about feelings and romance when I'm trying to watch football. Zachary couldn't help but grin. Deal. And if you propose, I want to be consulted first. As both best friend and brother, I demand involvement in ring selection. We have been dating for a month, Natalie protested, but she was smiling. I'm just planning ahead. Marcus took a long drink of his beer. This is weird. You two being together is really weird. But you will get used to it, Zachary asked. I'll have to, won't I? Marcus shook his head, but there was affection in his expression now. Just promise me this is real, both of you, because if this is just some fling, it's not worth the weirdness. It's real, Natalie and Zachary said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. Marcus groaned. You are already one of those couples. Great. The relief Zachary felt was overwhelming. He hadn't realized how much the secret had been weighing on him until it was lifted. After Marcus went back outside to finish cleaning up, Natalie wrapped her arms around Zachary's waist. See? I told you it would be okay. He kissed the top of her head. You were right. As usual. Get used to that. Over the next few months, Zachary and Natalie's relationship deepened in ways that surprised both of them. They discovered they fit together in the small moments as much as the grand ones. Natalie would show up at his office with dinner when she knew he was working late. Zachary would surprise her with flowers on random Tuesdays. They developed routines and inside jokes and a shared language that came from truly knowing someone. Marcus, true to his word, adjusted to the new dynamic. There were awkward moments, like when Zachary accidentally mentioned a weekend trip he and Natalie had taken during a basketball game, and Marcus had to put his hands over his ears like a child. But overall, he seemed genuinely happy for them. 6 months into their relationship, Zachary invited Natalie to the company's annual gala, a formal event that he usually dreaded. But walking in with Natalie on his arm, her stunning in a green dress that matched her eyes, he felt proud in a way he never had before. Everyone is staring at us, Natalie whispered as they made their way through the cocktail hour. They are staring at you. I'm just the lucky guy next to you. She rolled her eyes but smiled. Smooth talker. Throughout the evening, Zachary introduced Natalie to board members, investors, and colleagues. He watched her charm every single person she met, asking thoughtful questions and genuinely listening to the answers. She wasn't intimidated by the wealth or power in the room, treating everyone with the same warmth she showed her patients. She is wonderful, Jennifer told him during a quiet moment. Don't screw this up. That's the plan. Later, as they danced to a slow song, Natalie looked up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What are you thinking? He asked. That I love you, that I should tell you that more often. His arms tightened around her. I love you too. More than I thought I could love anyone. Good. Because you are stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. As the song ended, Zachary realized he had never felt more certain about anything in his life. This woman, this brilliant, compassionate, challenging woman, was his future. He didn't know exactly when he had gone from being intrigued to being completely in love, but there was no going back now. A year into their relationship, Zachary started thinking seriously about marriage. It wasn't a sudden decision, but rather a growing certainty that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Natalie. He approached Marcus one evening, asking to meet for drinks. This feels ominous, Marcus said as they settled into their usual booth at their favorite bar. You have that serious face on. I want to ask Natalie to marry me. Marcus set down his beer carefully. Okay, that's big. I know. And I remember your rule about consulting you, so here I am, consulting. You really want to do this, marriage, forever, all of it. I've never been more sure of anything. Zachary leaned forward. She's it for me, Marcus. I can't imagine my life without her anymore. A smile spread across Marcus's face. Then you have my blessing. Not that you really need it, but since you asked, I need it. Your family man. Both of you are. They spent the next hour discussing ring options, proposal ideas, and logistics. Marcus shared stories about their parents' marriage, giving Zachary insight into what Natalie might want. By the end of the night, Zachary had a plan. He chose a Saturday in early fall, nearly 2 years after that first night in the emergency room. He had arranged a picnic in the park where they had spent so many afternoons talking. Natalie arrived thinking it was just another date, but Zachary had set up a blanket under their favorite tree, with candles in glass jars creating a soft glow as the sun began to set. "This is beautiful," Natalie said, settling onto the blanket. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. Just wanted to do something special for you." They ate and talked and laughed, and as the sky turned pink and orange, Zachary felt his nerves building. Finally, as Natalie was reaching for another strawberry, he stopped her hand. "Natalie, I need to say something." She must have heard the shift in his tone because her eyes widened. "Okay." Zachary took both her hands in his. 2 years ago, I walked into that emergency room convinced I was just going to get stitched up and go home. Instead, I found you. Or maybe I found you again, in a way that finally mattered. You have changed everything about my life. You have made me happier, braver, more myself than I have ever been. You challenge me and support me and love me in ways I didn't know I needed. Tears were already forming in Natalie's eyes. "Zachary." He released one of her hands to pull the ring box from his pocket. "I don't want to spend another day without knowing you will be by my side forever. Natalie Ross, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out as a sob. "Yes, of course, yes." His hands shook as he slid the ring onto her finger, a simple platinum band with an emerald surrounded by diamonds. She had mentioned once in passing that she had always preferred emeralds to diamonds, and he had remembered. "It's perfect," she breathed, looking at the ring. Then she launched herself at him, kissing him with such force that they both fell back onto the blanket, laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you so much," she said between kisses. "I can't believe you did all this. I had help. Marcus may have been involved. Of course he was." She laughed, then pulled back to look at the ring again. "An emerald. You remembered." "I remember everything you tell me." They stayed in the park until the stars came out, making plans and dreaming about the future. When they finally headed home, Natalie called Marcus from the car. "He did it," she announced when her brother answered. "He actually did it." Marcus's whoop was loud enough that Zachary could hear it from the driver's seat. "Congratulations, Nat. I'm so happy for you. Thanks for helping him plan it. That's what big brothers are for." "Now let me talk to my future brother-in-law." Natalie handed Zachary the phone, and he took it while keeping one hand on the wheel. "Welcome to the family officially," Marcus said. "You're stuck with us now. Best decision I ever made. Planning the wedding was a chaotic, joyful experience." Natalie wanted something intimate, just close friends and family, while Zachary's position meant there were certain professional obligations to consider. They compromised on a medium-sized ceremony at a beautiful estate outside the city. The months leading up to the wedding flew by in a blur of tastings, fittings, and decisions about flowers and music, and 1,000 other details that Zachary had never considered before. But through it all, he never lost sight of what mattered. At the end of all this planning, he got to marry Natalie. Marcus served as his best man, which felt right in ways Zachary couldn't articulate. The fact that his best friend was also going to be his brother-in-law seemed like the perfect culmination of their story. The night before the wedding, Marcus and Zachary had a quiet dinner together. "You nervous?" Marcus asked. "Not even a little. Should I be?" "Nah, you guys are solid." Marcus paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I wasn't sure about this at first, you know. When you told me you were dating Natalie, I worried about what would happen if things went wrong. I remember, you threatened to end me. I did. But watching you two together this past couple of years, I've realized something. You're better together than you ever were apart. You balance each other out." Marcus raised his glass. "To my best friend marrying my sister, which should be weird but somehow isn't." Zachary clinked his glass against Marcus's. "To family. The one we are born with and the one we choose." The wedding day was perfect. Natalie walked down the aisle in a simple, elegant dress, and Zachary felt his throat close up at the sight of her. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was his. This incredible woman had chosen him, had agreed to spend her life with him, and he still couldn't quite believe his luck. During the ceremony, as they exchanged vows, Zachary spoke from the heart. "I promise to always see you, Natalie. Not as Marcus's sister, not as anyone other than exactly who you are. I promise to support your dreams, to be there in the hard moments, and to never take for granted how lucky I am that you walked into that emergency room the same night I did." Natalie's vows were equally heartfelt. "I promise to challenge you when you hide behind your CEO mask, to remind you that you are more than your work. I promise to be your partner in everything, to build a life with you that's full of love and laughter and adventure. And I promise to always appreciate the gift of falling in love with my brother's best friend." That line got a laugh from the crowd and an eye roll from Marcus, but everyone could see the affection behind it. The reception was a celebration in the truest sense. People danced and toasted and shared stories about the couple. Jennifer gave a speech about watching Zachary transform from a workaholic hiding from life into a man who had found genuine happiness. Marcus's speech was funny and touching, talking about how he had known Zachary and Natalie separately for years, but only recently saw how perfect they were together. As Zachary and Natalie had their first dance, he leaned down to whisper in her ear, "How do you feel, Mrs. James?" "Like the luckiest woman in the world, and like my feet hurt in these shoes," he laughed. "We can ditch the shoes. I'll carry you if I have to, my hero." After the dance, as the party continued around them, they stole a quiet moment on the terrace overlooking the gardens. "Can you believe we almost didn't happen?" Natalie mused, leaning against him. "If you had gone to a different hospital or if I had not been working that night. I don't think about those what-ifs. We found each other when we were both ready. That's what matters. I love you." She turned to face him, her eyes shining. "Thank you for being brave enough to break the rules. Thank you for being worth breaking them for." They kissed as the stars came out above them, the sounds of celebration drifting from inside. In that moment, Zachary felt a completeness he had been searching for his entire adult life. The first year of marriage brought adjustments and challenges, but also deeper intimacy and understanding. They moved into a new house together, something that was theirs rather than his or hers. Natalie continued her nursing career, though she transitioned to a position in cardiac care that had more regular hours. Zachary made a conscious effort to delegate more at work, creating space in his life for his wife. They traveled to Italy for their delayed honeymoon, spending 2 weeks exploring vineyards and coastal towns. They took cooking classes in Tuscany, got lost in Venice, and spent lazy afternoons on the Amalfi Coast talking about their future. "I want kids someday," Natalie said one afternoon as they watched the sunset over the water. "Not immediately, but eventually. How many? I don't know, 2, 3, enough that they have siblings like I had Marcus. Zachary pulled her closer. I like that idea. A house full of little people who have your eyes and your stubbornness, and your intelligence and your terrible sense of humor. My humor is excellent, thank you very much. She kissed him. Keep telling yourself that. 2 years into their marriage, Natalie came home from work with news. Zachary was in the kitchen attempting to make dinner when she walked in, her expression unreadable. Hey, how was your day? He asked, then noticed her face. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She set her bag down carefully. I'm pregnant. Zachary nearly dropped the knife he was holding. We're going to have a baby. A smile broke across her face. I found out this afternoon. I wanted to tell you right away, but I also wanted to take a test here to be sure. He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and wrapped her in his arms. We're having a baby. Are you happy? There was vulnerability in her voice. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He pulled back to look at her. You're going to be an amazing mother. You are going to be an amazing father. They called Marcus that night, putting him on video chat. When they told him the news, his reaction was predictably enthusiastic. I'm going to be an uncle. Oh man, this kid is going to be so spoiled. You are not allowed to teach them bad habits, Natalie warned. No promises. That's what uncles are for. The pregnancy was mostly smooth, though Natalie suffered from intense morning sickness in the first trimester. Zachary did his best to support her, working from home when she felt especially miserable, rubbing her feet when they swelled, and attending every doctor's appointment. When they found out they were having a girl, Zachary felt a surge of protectiveness so intense it was almost overwhelming. He started reading every parenting book he could find, much to Natalie's amusement. You can't learn parenting from books, she told him one evening as he highlighted passages about infant sleep training. I can try. You are going to be a great dad. Just trust your instincts. My instincts say to wrap her in bubble wrap and never let anything bad happen to her. Natalie laughed. Yeah, that sounds about right. They decorated the nursery together, choosing soft yellows and greens. Marcus helped assemble furniture, making jokes about Zachary's incompetence with tools. Friends threw them a baby shower. Zachary's office threw another one, and Jennifer gave them a beautiful handmade quilt. As Natalie's due date approached, Zachary became increasingly nervous. He triple-checked the hospital bag, mapped out multiple routes to ensure they could get there quickly, and slept with his phone on the nightstand. You are going to give yourself an ulcer, Natalie said a week before the due date. I just want everything to go smoothly. It will. And if it doesn't, we will handle it together, like we handle everything. Labor started early on a Tuesday morning. Natalie woke Zachary calmly, told him her water had broken, and suggested he might want to get dressed before they left. He moved through the practiced motions of gathering their things, helping her to the car, and driving to the hospital, all while his heart pounded with a mixture of excitement and terror. 14 hours later, Charlotte Marie James entered the world, screaming her displeasure at being born. Zachary cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. When the nurse placed Charlotte in Natalie's arms, he sat on the edge of the hospital bed, one arm around his wife, staring in wonder at their daughter. She's perfect, Natalie whispered. Look at her, Zachary. She looks like you. She has your nose and your chin. Poor thing, he laughed through his tears. I love you so much, both of you. Marcus arrived an hour later bearing flowers and balloons. When he held Charlotte for the first time, he teared up too. Hey there, little one. I'm your Uncle Marcus. We are going to have so many adventures together. He looked up at Natalie and Zachary. You guys made a perfect baby. We really did, Natalie agreed, exhausted but glowing. The first few months of parenthood were harder than either of them expected. Charlotte was a colicky baby who rarely slept for more than 2 hours at a stretch. Zachary and Natalie took turns walking her around the house at 3 in the morning, singing off key lullabies and wondering if they would ever sleep again. But even in the exhaustion, there were moments of pure joy. Charlotte's first smile, directed at Zachary while he was changing her diaper. The way she would calm down when Natalie sang to her. The peaceful weight of her sleeping on his chest while he worked from home. Zachary reduced his hours at the office, trusting his management team more and prioritizing time with his family. It was an adjustment, learning to let go of some control, but it felt right. His father had missed so much by working constantly, and Zachary was determined not to make the same mistake. When Charlotte was 6 months old, they had a small gathering to celebrate. Marcus brought his new girlfriend, a landscape architect named Sophia, who was warm and funny and clearly smitten with both Marcus and baby Charlotte. "She's going to have all of you wrapped around her little finger," Sophia observed as she watched Marcus make ridiculous faces to get Charlotte to laugh. "Already does," Zachary admitted. "I used to think I was disciplined and controlled. Then I had a daughter." Natalie joined them, Charlotte in her arms. "She definitely has her daddy figured out. One smile and he gives her whatever she wants." "That's not true." At their skeptical looks, Zachary relented. "Okay, maybe it's a little true." That night, after everyone had left and Charlotte was finally asleep, Zachary and Natalie collapsed on the couch together. "I can't believe this is our life," Natalie said. "Sometimes I think about that night in the emergency room and how different everything could have been." "I think about that too, about all the ways we almost missed each other. But we didn't miss each other. We found our way." She laced her fingers through his, "and I would do it all again exactly the same way. Even the part where we had to tell Marcus, even that." Though his face was pretty priceless. They laughed together, the easy laughter of people who knew each other completely. Outside, the city lights twinkled in the darkness, the same view Zachary had looked at for years feeling lonely. But now, with Natalie beside him and their daughter sleeping peacefully down the hall, he felt only gratitude. As the years passed, their family continued to grow and evolve. Charlotte became an energetic toddler with her mother's determination and her father's analytical mind. When she was 2, Natalie got pregnant again, this time with a boy they named David, after Zachary's father. Marcus married Sophia in a beautiful garden ceremony where Charlotte served as the world's most enthusiastic flower girl. Watching his best friend and brother-in-law exchange vows, Zachary felt the rightness of how all their lives had woven together. Work continued, but it no longer defined Zachary the way it once had. He made time for family dinners, for helping Charlotte with her homework, for date nights with Natalie. The company thrived under his more balanced leadership, and the board actually commented on how much more effective he had become. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Zachary and Natalie returned to the park where he had proposed. They left the kids with Marcus and Sophia, stealing an afternoon for themselves. 5 years, Natalie said as they sat under their tree. "Feels like forever and no time at all." "I know what you mean. I can barely remember what life was like before you. Lonely, probably, and boring." He pulled her close. "Definitely both of those things. You know what I think about sometimes? How close I came to not going to the hospital that night. I almost just wrapped my hand and went home. But you didn't. You went, and I was there, and everything changed. Best decision I never made consciously." They stayed there for hours, talking about the past and planning for the future. They discussed maybe having a 3rd child, debated about where to go on their next vacation, and reminisced about the early days of their relationship. "You ever regret it?" Natalie asked. "All the complications that came with being with me." Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie. You and our kids, the life we have built. I wouldn't change any of it. Good answer. She kissed him softly. Because you are stuck with me forever. Promise. Promise. By their 10th anniversary, Charlotte was 8 and David was 5. And they had added one more member to the family, a daughter named Emma who was 3 and convinced she could talk to animals. The house was chaotic and loud, full of toys and laughter and the beautiful mess of family life. Zachary had stepped back from some of his CEO duties, promoting a talented executive to COO and sharing more of the workload. It gave him flexibility to coach Charlotte's soccer team, to be home for dinner most nights, to be present in ways his own father never had been. Marcus and Sophia had 2 kids of their own now, and the cousins were as close as siblings. Family gatherings were loud, joyful affairs filled with too much food and competing conversations. One evening, as Zachary was reading Emma a bedtime story while Natalie got David settled, Charlotte appeared in the doorway. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always." "What's up?" "Uncle Marcus said you and Mom's story is really romantic. Will you tell me how you met?" Zachary looked at his eldest daughter, seeing so much of Natalie in her curious green eyes. "Well, it's kind of a long story. I like long stories." He shifted Emma over and patted the bed for Charlotte to join them. "Okay. It started on a night when I did something pretty stupid and cut my hand on a glass door." As he told the story, simplified for young ears, he watched his daughters' faces light up with interest. When he got to the part about being nervous to tell Uncle Marcus, Charlotte giggled. "Uncle Marcus said he knew you were perfect for Mom right away." "He did, huh? That's not exactly how I remember it." "He said you made Mom really happy, and that's what mattered most." Natalie appeared in the doorway, having finished with David. She leaned against the frame, listening with a soft smile. "Your dad does make me really happy," she confirmed. "Happiest I have ever been." Later, after all 3 kids were finally asleep, Zachary and Natalie had a rare, quiet moment together. They sat on the back porch, watching fireflies and holding hands. "Can you believe our life?" Zachary asked. 10 years ago, if someone had told me I would have all this, I would never have believed them." "I would have. I always knew you were meant for more than just work." "You saw that in me before I saw it in myself." She rested her head on his shoulder. "That's what love is, I think, seeing the best in someone and helping them become it. You did that for me. You still do every day." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of knowing each other's thoughts. The house behind them was full of sleeping children, the evidence of the life they had built together. Zachary thought about that night in the emergency room, about all the fear and uncertainty that had followed, about taking the risk to pursue something he had been told was forbidden. He thought about Marcus's initial shock and eventual blessing. About his wedding day, watching Natalie walk toward him. About holding each of his children for the first time, overwhelmed by love and responsibility. About every small moment in between that had brought them to this point. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For seeing past the CEO. For giving me a chance. For building this life with me." Natalie lifted her head to look at him. "You don't have to thank me for loving you. It's the easiest thing I have ever done." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 10 years of history and the promise of decades more to come. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm glad you walked into that glass door," he laughed. "Me too. Best accident of my life." As the stars came out above them and the fireflies danced in the yard, Zachary James felt a contentment he had never imagined possible. The forbidden love that had once seemed like such a risk had become his forever, just as the story had promised. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would choose this life, this woman, this family, over and over again in every possible universe. The years continued to unfold with the beautiful ordinariness of a well-lived life. There were challenges, of course. David went through a difficult phase in middle school. Emma's determination to become a veterinarian led to an ever-expanding collection of rescued animals. Charlotte navigated the complexities of high school with her mother's grace and her father's analytical approach to problems. Through it all, Zachary and Natalie remained partners in every sense of the word. They celebrated victories and weathered storms together, their love deepening with each passing year. They grew older, laugh lines appearing around their eyes, gray creeping into their hair, but the way they looked at each other remained constant. Marcus remained Zachary's best friend, and the added dimension of being brothers-in-law only strengthened their bond. Their families vacationed together, celebrated holidays together, and supported each other through life's inevitable ups and downs. On their 20th anniversary, Zachary arranged another surprise. This time, it was a renewal of their vows, held in the same park where he had proposed all those years ago. Their children stood with them, along with Marcus and Sophia and their kids, as Zachary and Natalie recommitted to each other. 20 years ago, I was terrified to tell you how I felt, Zachary said, holding Natalie's hands. I thought loving you was forbidden, that it would ruin everything. Instead, loving you saved me. You taught me that life is about more than work and responsibility. You showed me what it means to truly live. And every single day for the past 20 years, I have been grateful that I was brave enough to break the rules for you. Natalie's vows were equally moving. You were worth every complication, every difficult conversation, every moment of uncertainty. You have been my partner, my love, my home. Thank you for choosing me, for building this beautiful life with me, for being the man I always knew you could be. Their children cheered. Marcus wiped away tears, and as Zachary kissed his wife surrounded by everyone they loved, he felt the profound satisfaction of a promise kept. The forbidden had indeed become his forever, and he wouldn't have had it any other way. As the sun set on that anniversary celebration, with their family gathered around them and the future stretching out full of possibility, Zachary James knew he was the luckiest man alive. Not because of his success or his wealth, but because of the woman who had seen past all of that to the man underneath. The woman who had taken a chance on him, challenged him, loved him, and built a life with him that exceeded his wildest dreams. And it had all started with a cut hand, an emergency room, and the courage to acknowledge that sometimes the best things in life come from breaking the rules. The forbidden love that had once terrified him had become the foundation of everything that mattered. It was a story he would tell their grandchildren someday, about how their grandfather fell in love with his best friend's sister and found his forever in the most unexpected place.